Hello and welcome to The Hill is Always Greener, a show where four friends have chill discussions about Sonic the Hedgehog to distract themselves from everything right now at time of recording, but let's not get into that. We're going to be talking about Sonic and Sonic-related things, and some things that are tangentially related to Sonic, but they come back to Sonic in the end. Don't worry, Sonic fans, we're getting to him. But I am Falero.
I'm Game Buddy.
I'm Rock the Jake.
And I'm Cyberlink.
Yeah, that's all of us. We made it. What's been happening with Sonic lately? And when I say lately, I mean at time of recording, as I always do, because we are a million years in the future, it feels like, whenever we do these things.
Well, I think we've all played Sonic Origins. It has been officially released, but we're going to save our broad thoughts for the future, because we're just going to do a whole episode about the various Sonic compilations. As I'm saying that, I'm realizing there's probably about 24 more than I can think off the top of my head. So that'll be an interesting topic to undertake that I'm looking forward to.
We'll keep it relatively contained. We're not going to talk about every compilation that has a Sonic game. We'll focus on the important ones.
Like the DS ports of the original Genesis games. Forgot about those, didn't you?
No, I didn't. Trust me, we're not going to spend 2 hours talking about the 2-in-1 pack for Sonic Advance at Sonic Pinball Party.
Yeah.
We'll only spend 1 hour on it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a reasonable compromise.
And maybe not the Sonic and Garfield pack-in. We've seen the meme pictures. That's the only interesting thing about it.
Well, speaking of unlikely collaborations between two different franchises...
Hot damn!
Woo!
Yes, got it in one.
Talk about a segue right there.
Oh yeah, that's right. I was going to actually introduce it. Look, I keep forgetting it's me. I'm leading this. It's very uncomfortable.
You are our expert here, so please guide us.
Only comparatively, because I played the games we're talking about. Well, so when I was the one who proposed this episode. I proposed it as, let's talk about Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, thinking that I would get everyone to talk about Puyo, because I'm a sneaky person like that. But it turns out we just realized, actually, there's a lot of Puyo Puyo stuff we can talk about, and you don't know what Puyo Puyo is? Well, that's fair, because it's only just recently become known in the West, I think.
Yeah, it's been around for a long time, but I feel like it's come much more into vogue over the last, half a decade or so. It's definitely still had a presence, but I feel like it is probably bigger in the West now than it has been maybe ever.
Some of the games we're going to talk about, you've definitely seen a Puyo.
Yeah, there's been a Puyo in some form.
Disguised as something else.
Yeah, because that's something that, it's not something that apparently the West was interested in having. They loved the game element of Puyo, but everything else, what's all that stuff? Because I think this is all right. Let's get organized now. I'm organized. I'm thinking. Sorry, I have my notes here, and what am I doing? Oh God, I've wrote so much. Sorry, lads. Right. So Puyo Puyo. Now this is part where I plead to you, Sonic fans, to just allow me for a brief, short period of time to talk about something that isn't Sonic. No, come back. We are going to talk about Sonic. It is tied to Sonic, but we're going to talk about another franchise within the Sega sphere. It's good, alright? I don't know if you've ever heard of Puyo Puyo. It's a bunch of little squidgy things. You might have known them as beans. And if you've known them as beans, you're probably a Sonic fan. Because there was a game called Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine that used it. But what it was originally... Now, we're going back in time a little bit. Believe it or not, this funny little puzzle game with all these little multicolored blobs came from a first-person dungeon-crawling RPG series with a deep lore. Now, it's a bit weird, isn't it?
I did not know that.
Bit. I was going to say, I want to say it started on the MSX. Is that right?
I believe those were the original ones, the MSX. It was made by the game company Compile, or whichever tense you want to put in that word. And there was a series called Mado Monogatari, or Sorcery Saga, as it would be localized in other things. It's more or less what it translates to. Magic story, I guess, It was, like I said, a first-person dungeon-crawling RPG series. You would walk around these little dungeons, I guess, and you'd be playing this cute little girl called Al-Nadja who had magic powers, and she would fight against cute little monsters or like these little chibified little people, and she would fight against them, and eventually she would battle against Satan. That is actually the truth. Kind of. Not necessarily the biblically accurate Satan, but the ultimate villain of most of the Mado Monogatari games was a character called Satan. He's actually a pretty boy. He's not like the devil, he's not the red guy from Cow and Chicken. We're looking at we're looking at this this Bishunen with he's got horns, but he's just this like pretty boy who's in love with this underage character, and it's really good.
more of a Paradise Lost take on Lucifer.
Yeah, and it is. I've not played many of the series. I've briefly played like a fan translation of the Game Gear port, because there have been many ports of Monogatari, specifically the first 3 games which were released as a pack, 1, 2, 3. But for the most part, it's all very charming. There are these cute little characters. They're all small and squidgy. And then they brought out like the PC 9801 ports, however you pronounce that. How do they say again? PC 9801? Was it 90? Whatever. There was a PC port of it that they also brought out that was styled more realistically, and then there's a point where Al decapitates a dude, and then she fights him, and his decapitated head is floating in the air, and it's really weird.
Talk about a decap attack, sheesh.
Heyo!
That's another Sega reference for you out there. For the most part, like, aside from that little strange... that strange sort of tangent where they decided to make it really unpleasant, it's mostly cute little characters. And one of the things you would encounter were these little slime creatures, like the things in Dragon Quest, called Puyos. And they would stack up on each other, and they'd be like, and they're different colours, and you'd use elemental attacks on them, that would, depending on what their colour is, and that's kind of what set things up for Puyo Puyo, a spin-off of this franchise. Because the Compile employee and Sting Entertainment founder Kazunari Yonemitsu felt that puzzle games at the time had weak characters, because that's the thing puzzle games are missing. Deep lore and storytelling. And so he decided he wanted to make... He took characters from Mado Monogatari, this wild and wacky little sorcery series, and inspired by Street Fighter 2 of all things, he says, I want to make a competitive puzzle game with a story. And that is Puyo Puyo, where you get these little Puyos and you stack them up in 4s, and then they disappear and other ones fall down and you make little chains. It's all very fun. I've been talking for a while.
No, I was just trying to think. That is incredibly fascinating. Like, I'm just looking at the release page for Mado Monogatari and seeing that none of these were localized. If I'm going by these release dates, that the only ones to ever make it over here wasn't until the remake of the original one, which is where the Sorcery Saga name comes in, which was only on the PS Vita.
Yep, and that was like long after they used like all the characters from the original one are gone at that point, because spoilers, they sold the Puyo franchise and everything to Sega at one point due to financial problems, and they were just left with Mado Monogatari, so they had to like replace everything with their own like new characters. And that's what Sorcery Saga is now. It's
so fascinating that this is just looking at it, there's dozens of releases, whether it's, releases to different platforms, but that would just never made it anywhere outside of Japan. So it's been a pleasure to like go through a lot of these, and this is another instance where we bring it up a lot about Sonic stuff, to where now that there is lots of fan translations of like the original games, like you linked us to a translation of the original Puyo Puyo manual, and like, yes, there is an entire backstory to all this stuff. I love it. This is so fascinating.
Now, if we really want to get into the deep backstory for the first game, Do we? Oh, you know what? I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it. Sorry, Sonic fans, but I just think this stuff is really interesting. I'm sorry, I like this. I've not actually played Monogatari, but Puyo Puyo, oh, that's my jam. But you see, what I didn't realise, because Puyo Puyo, much like the original Monogatari games, is really pleasant. You're fighting against the little chippy monsters again. They're the enemies that you fight in each stage of these little, the little jelly game where you pop these little Puyos. And it's all very lovely. And even if it is Arl fighting literally Satan, who would go on to be localized as Dark Prince, understandably so. But, oh boy. So, Puyo Puyo is a lovely little cheerful world that rarely ever has much conflict other than Puyo battles. And it's all very fun and nice and lovely. But if you get into the... Sorry, I need a moment. If you get into the light novel series written by Compile employee Kenji Oda, who originally came up with a storyline that was going to be for Monogatari on the Saturn, before financial troubles kind of got in the way of that, his whole idea is he wanted to make an extended universe of these characters, like that goes back in time as to the war between humanity and God and Satan and the devil and so forth. At the end of all these Monogatari stories, what he wrote in these light novels is that at one point Arl discovered and fought against literally God, or a character called the Creator, but he's basically God. And after hundreds of years, she finally defeats God, and the world is left in a complete and utter void, and no one is there anymore apart from the souls of Satan and Arl. And Satan decides, I'm going to make a whole brand new world. It's the new world. It's the Puyo world where everything's really nice. But the only people who have souls are me and Arl. And so now everyone else is a soulless homunculi in this world. No one ever ages. And it's just a simulated, weird, soulless world. And that is the setting for Puyo Puyo. Isn't that fucked up?
Jeez. It doesn't sound too bad.
I don't think that was ever the original intention, by the way. This is just something the guy came up with.
All things considered.
I feel like I need to lay down after that.
Sorry, I took the reins for a while. I just wanted to get us in the right mindset for this fun little puzzle game.
I did not know that particular backstory, and having that knowledge gives me such joy.
So basically, this is a match 4 puzzle game, a bit like your Bejeweled or your... Sorry, the transition there.
No, I love it.
And that is the basis for... By the way, we're talking about Sonic again. You can all come back now, don't worry. I tried to keep it brief.
I will say, just as a general note, it is incredibly funny to me that Puyo Puyo has blown up to such an extent that it is basically almost completely erased in a lot of people's minds the very series that it spun off from. It's like the Frasier to Monogatari's Cheers.
What a comparison.
I did like that episode where they played a match 4 game and Satan was there.
Niles kills God.
I mean, I feel like that would have been a reference people would have been more likely to say than to say that Monogatari was Good Morning Miss Bliss. That reference is specifically for about 5 people, one of whom just turned the podcast off.
How this ties into Sonic the Hedgehog, you're probably wondering what, how, why. Well, for those of you who paid attention, the original Puyo Puyo, or at least the Mega Drive version of it, was localized in the West on the Mega Drive on Genesis as Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. That's a title. So for many of us, we're playing a Puyo game without even knowing it was Puyo. We thought we were popping beans.
And I feel like that was a relatively common practice during that era,
What, popping beans?
Well, yes, that, but also just like kind of relocalizing and just completely converting over a lot of these games that were deemed to not quite fit the sensibilities of the 90s kind of video game culture, basically. Like, the example I immediately think of is like how Panel de Pon got localized into Tetris Attack and later the different Puzzle League games. And it was only years later that we started just getting normal panel de pawn on its own, generally untranslated, because that led into a whole thing where they can't re-release the Tetris Attack version because it's got Tetris in the name. That would require, a whole other thing getting signed off on. It's just weird stuff like that. And, that would even happen to the Super Nintendo localization of original Puyo Puyo, which would get brought over as Kirby's Avalanche or Ghost Trap, depending on where you're from.
Yeah, that's interesting, seeing that one. I had no idea this was happening, and I had a Super Nintendo at one point. And we're just going to briefly go over this before we get to the thing what we're actually here for, which is Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Yes, it stars that Kirby, and yes, he can be a bit of a jerk in this. If you see the little pre-match cutscenes, he is mean. It's very good.
They're very good.
Would that also be the case with a Puzzle Bobble, which everybody else called Bust a Move for the first 20 years it existed?
Almost. A little bit. Like, that was mostly just a name change, but everything else was largely the same. Whereas all of these were, everything got changed over. The graphics, the dialogue. Basically, the core mechanics were the only thing that stayed consistent.
And those core mechanics, by the way, in the first Puyo game, it's really, really hard and not fair. I don't want to get too far into the technical details of it, but from the first game, they realized they'd made a horrible mistake. And in Puyo Puyo Su, which is the second game, they fixed the rules so that now you're basically allowed to offset some of the garbage Puyos that were coming in counter. But in this one, no such luck. Because as I mentioned, it's a match 4 game. Once you pop your Puyos, it makes some garbage Puyos, which are like these little sort of empty looking ones that will pop up on the opponent's screen. Because this is not just a match 4 game; it's a match 4 competitive game against the CPU or a player. And if you make enough of a chain, like if you make like a 5 chain essentially of these Puyos, there's no coming back from it. There is no defense. You've got to just try and, I don't know, hold off and try and beat your opponent in time. But no, otherwise you're screwed right away. So it's not very competitive. And that's the one that got localized so much, including in Mean Bean Machine.
That's one of the key things about the mechanics of Puyo Puyo is it's not like Tetris where, whatever formation you have the lines in, it stays like that. Everything drops, and you need to account for that when you're kind of planning out your strategy in your mind as pieces are coming down. Imagine, okay, if I clear this, that means everything above is going to drop and they're going to fall in this way. Can I, theoretically set up a chain so that this is going to drop into this, which will pop and then drop into this, which will pop and then so on and so forth to really like maximize your combo and do the most amount of quote unquote damage to your opponent.
I think that's where my brain gets caught up to where I just haven't spent the time to train myself to play these, because I like puzzle games like Tetris. Like I remember borrowing Game Boy Tetris from a friend of mine when I was like 7 or 8 and just being enthralled by the experience. But yes, I, especially in match games like Puyo, I struggle with seeing ahead instead of like thinking, oh, I need to build a chain because that's how you rack up score, send garbage to your opponent. I'm always like, oh no, that's a green one. It needs to go up against another green one.
Yeah.
And so it's a war of attrition where I'm just doing one teeny little combo at a time.
I'm not that great at Puyo. I'm okay. Generally, the best I can do is try to set up like triple combos. If I can get something to drop into something else to drop into something else, that's enough for me. And I just try to get those as often as I can because I can't set up anything longer than that.
I actually, myself, I haven't played any Puyo, I don't think. When you mentioned Bust a Move earlier, I was just like, oh yeah, because I used to play that in like arcades and like the arcade part of a pizza place when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's still one of my favorite puzzle games.
Yeah. But like as far as Puyo, like straight up by name, I haven't played that. But like to kind of comment on what Jeremy was saying about trying to look ahead. Like I understand the strategy of like how to play the game well, but I still need to figure out my personal execution of it, because I also, in preparation of this episode, have played a good little bit of Mean Bean Machine. It's And I was even before this saying it's a fun game. I like it, but I am terrible at it. And because I just get so like caught up in the moment, just like I need to remember to look at like what's coming because I'm just like, okay, I need another green. No, that's 2 reds. You've failed me. You've destroyed me. You've taken my family and my crops. And
and then by that point, you're drowning in like garbage, Puyo, or whatever they call the beans in this one. What was the localization for it? Are they like roboticized beans or something? We're going to have to get into the actual story of Mean Bean in a moment because there actually is one sort of.
I will say this game is super difficult unless you have a second controller.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
because there is a rather infamous exploit where normally the computer player is able to, just like you can very quickly drop pieces down by holding down. Later games would let you tap up to just instantly drop, which is a pretty common thing in puzzle games. But there is an exploit where if you hold, I believe, left on the second player's controller while playing a one-player game, then it, for some reason, prevents the AI from being able to do the hard drop and force it down any faster than the normal rate of descent. So theoretically, you could use that to kind of cheese the AI and make things a little easier on yourself.
Or you could learn to play it like I did, because I played this a lot as a kid, because it was tangentially Sonic related, and I loved the TV show it was based on. And we're going to probably get into how it is based on Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog in a moment. But
based on a TV show?
I know, right? Who would have thought? So this localization is not just based on Sonic as usually presented in the Mega Drive games. This is specifically based on Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. But there's no Sonic in it. There's no Sonic, there's no Tails. It's just Robotnik and various minions. If you've watched the first episode of the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, the super special Sonic Search and Smash Squad, all of the various background enemies that showed up in this, these bounty hunter badniks, are just represented as the entire cast of enemies that you face in this game. Such memorable characters as Squeal and Arms and Davy Sprocket. The ones that really stand out. Also Scratch Grounder and Coconuts, naturally.
Yeah, I feel like they are kind of the quote-unquote boss encounters because they show up every 4th level.
Yeah. And once you fight them, the difficulty goes up, yeah.
Although, like, as I discovered when I got my Adventures of Sonic Blu-ray set, the continue screen is based very specifically on a shot from the unaired pilot.
Yeah. So if you look at it, it is just redrawn from that shot.
Gosh, it is so weird that one of the opponents is, I think he's called Dragon Breath.
Yeah.
God, it was probably because this is one of the episodes of Adventures of Sonic that I had on a VHS release. So I watched it 100 million thousand times as a child.
As you do.
I always thought he was so funny because he pulls like a big face, and I think Sonic drops something on top of him. But yes, just thinking that was the height of comedy, where he makes a funny face and then gets squished.
I think you see his underpants as well. That's pretty memorable. Like he's so shocked you see his pants, you see his boxers.
I think his little like Roman skirt kilt like flies off of him, and yes, I think you do see like heart boxers or something. But
the height of comedy.
God, that is just reawakening like childhood memories of rewinding that part.
Oh, so that was when you realized a few things about yourself.
Oh man, wow, I really stepped into that, huh? No, I don't think my sexual awakening was quite at Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, but
It is interesting though that if you like compare them side by side, like all of the new Badnik enemies basically play like their AI behaves exactly like their Puyo Puyo counterparts for that difficulty level or whatever. So like you can directly compare like, okay, Arms, he acts exactly like Draco Centauros. Frankly, is exactly like Skelodara, and so on and so forth. It's kind of cool just seeing like, okay, even though these characters look completely different, you can set somebody down in front of the game who has only played one, and everything they know about how to play one will directly, carry over to the other.
It is interesting, but they also, like, the fact that they filled this with bit part characters is compared to, like, the characters that have at least had, like, multiple games under their belt, like in Puyo Puyo.
Yeah.
They're just these background guys show up and they get dialogue for this. Yeah, why not, I suppose.
It is interesting, though. I believe that the one thing this version has that the original doesn't is a password system.
That's true, actually.
I don't think you could actually do that in Puyo Puyo 1.
No, I replayed Puyo Puyo 1 before this, and yeah, it's something they added in to give you an extra chance if you're really bad at this, or just, I don't know, are ruined by the system, which is fair, to be honest.
Maybe you know better than I, Chris, but how much of the music was shared? Because I definitely know some of it was. I recognize, when I hit the credits, I definitely recognize, like, the main Puyo Puyo theme as the credits theme. But
yeah. Most of the, like, there's lots of original music in Dr. Robotnik Mean Bean Machine, but yeah, you'll see, like, in the exercise mode where you get to test out your Puyo skills, that plays, like, the, what is it? It's almost like, it's like basically the boss character's stage music from Puyo Puyo, and when the multiplayer is the final battle against Satan, which is always, sorry, out of context. Like, I'm just imagining someone tuning into this episode from that point onwards and being blindsided once again by the mention of Satan.
I'm not entirely sure how, but, you know.
Yeah, you never know.
If that was the first time you heard us mention the word Satan in this episode, please let us know.
Also, that tune would later be reused in a certain stage in another Sonic game, but we'll get to that later. But mostly, mostly a few tracks are straight up taken from Puyo, just like the background imagery is taken from Puyo of the stages. Except for they use the same one, like, all throughout. It's the first level bosses. Or first level characters, they don't use, like, the weird ancient ruin stage, background stage that they use for the boss characters. But yeah, it's mostly just Puyo Puyo 1.
I do find it interesting, though, that even though this is really just a localization of a completely different game, you still see Mean Bean stuff pop up here and there, just little nods in other Sonic games. I'm glad that even as, you know, this kind of weird offshoot, it still gets its fair, its acknowledgement here and there in newer stuff.
Which definitely makes sense because, I mean, you know, when we talked about the pinball episode and Sonic's relationship with that, like, pinball has continued to be part of Sonic's identity in certain parts throughout his career. And as far as, like, Sonic lore and, you know, more expansively Sega lore, like, Mean Bean Machine, though not as popular as, like, pinball and especially not as popular as the mainline games, still has its place in, like, the Sonic chronology, and the fact that it's popped up either in writing or in comics or in actual gameplay down the line, like, I think it really stands as a testament of, like, how faithful the Sonic community can be towards, you know, anything that Sega puts out with the Sonic title under it, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
But in this case, quite good. Tough, but good.
Yeah, and I think it's partly because, like, you know, like I was saying, I would take anything Sonic related, so any Sonic game that was coming out, I would probably put my hands on. But it also helps that Puyo Puyo is really good. So, yeah, they were working with a really great base here.
Yeah, and it is interesting that by virtue of the fact that this was the official localization and they've never gone back really to do it for Puyo Puyo 1, this version gets re-released a lot, usually over regular Puyo Puyo. Like, this is the one that ends up in all the Sonic compilations and the Virtual Console and every Sega Genesis collection and all this other stuff. And it's kind of neat that this has continued to be a regular mainstay of Sega's legacy library.
It is, I guess it is nice to see that they did go back and do an official translation re-release of the first two Puyo games, I think, under the Sega Ages line, which I think they did technically discontinue, but they still have those out on, I think Switch is a big platform. I always love to pick up, you know, 2 or 3 of them when they go on sale for like $2 a piece. And so, yeah, I picked up the Puyo 1 and 2, and am interested into deep diving into those, because the first thing I noticed, especially in Puyo 1, is that there is a training easy mode that makes it makes it very easy to learn to place combos because the screen starts flashing saying, put this one here, idiot. And that really helps me.
That's one thing that is missing from Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, those little lesson levels where you go up against an AI that doesn't know how to turn the Puyos. So it's baby mode. It's great.
Unfortunately, they don't include like the full translated manual like you have sent us here, because without that, you don't get the backstory on characters like the skeleton T, who is a tea-loving Japanese man who is also a skeleton.
If only we could all learn to be as humble as the tea-loving skeleton.
Yes, it's very charming.
I think in terms of other like releases, it's just a fun little fact. While for the most part we got like Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine and things of that ilk, if you play the Japanese version of Puyo Puyo on the Game Gear in a North American or European Game Gear, it automatically localizes it, calling it the name Puzzlo Kids. That's the only difference. It's like been built into the cart apparently. So Puyo Puyo gets a localization, but everything else is the same. It's still Arl, it's still Carbuncle, it's still the Puyos, but it's just got a new title and everything's translated. And there isn't much to translate, to be fair.
I do like that Carbuncle, the little. I mean, what do you call him except just a little guy? Or
mascot.
He's a little mascot. Bean. I love that they show up in Mean Bean Machine as well, just for no reason. He's down there in the corner in between the screens, just making faces, being encouraging.
There's a reason. There's a storyline reason for why he's there, because he is another member of the town of Beanville, which are all these bean people are from, and he is a formerly roboticized bean by the name of Has-Bean. That's legitimately what it is.
I regret not digging into the lore of the Mean Bean Machine universe. Yeah, because then he would be cheering you on because you are a nameless protagonist in Mean Bean Machine who is trying to confront Dr. Robotnik to defeat him forever by playing this matching game.
Kind of think of it, this is one of the few ones where you don't actually have a natural protagonist, other than you're just some invisible force, I guess, that they smack talk.
You're one of those weird, ugly Mobians that appears in the background of the random Adventures of Sonic episode.
You are the very premise, the very idea of beans.
Man, this is... I don't think, I just want to touch, since we're, touching on the story here.
Please.
And Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Steaming Machine, which is the actual term for the Mean Bean Machine, I guess. Boy, I do feel like the people behind this didn't actually watch Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, other than that one episode. Not that there's, a deep characterization that you really need to refer to when it comes to that series. But I don't know, if you read some of the dialogue boxes beforehand, Grounder says, "My name is Grounder, but you can call me Sam, because I'm like a surface air missile, and I'm going to have you for lunch." And I'm like, Grounder would never think to use those words.
Grounder would never think.
Yeah, and Grounder would just be, duh.
The first thing that stood out to me is Coconuts introduces himself and then tries to tell you that he's Robotnik's favorite robot. When actually, when Coconuts is introduced, he's been demoted to toilet cleaning duty. So no.
Look, man, let him just have his fantasy.
Yeah,
he's got to have something to dream for.
He's just dreaming for that promotion still.
Promotion.
It's interesting. That's all I've got to say about it.
Yep. Maybe it's just my mind filling in gaps and desperately wanting to be this way. I'm pretty sure there's a digitized Long John Baldry "No!" scream when you beat Robotnik.
It sounds like him, almost.
Does a little bit. It could just be it's so bit crushed that you can't actually tell.
It could just be that.
I want to believe. I want to believe.
Well, when he does his laugh in the in the intro, it just kind of sounds like
yeah.
But it sounds like King Boo or from Sonic,
or like King Dedede.
Who is, funnily enough, the final boss of Kirby's Avalanche.
Yeah.
I actually got to do something with the game for the first time that I had never thought to do, because I was like just looking somewhere else in my room for just a little bit, and then I noticed a little cinematic started before the game, and it was just Dr. Robotnik and Scratch and Grounder, and Dr. Robotnik's going on about, I hate the citizens of Beanville, so I want you to go out and steal them so I can turn them into my bean robots. And I had never seen that little cutscene before, and even though it's like very simple, very cheesy, it's just like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Like, it's interesting that they actually included that instead of just like left the story in the manual and just let you start playing. And I also want to say for that cutscene, probably one of the only confirmed times that Scratch and Grounder can just teleport.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to imply that they're running off to do his bidding, because there's that little pachoo noise, but they do look like they just vanish off screen. Yeah. So I think someone's really not been paying attention to the characters of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. We can never teleport. What was this?
I spent a year on Yardrat and learned instant transmission.
And Scratch taught me it.
It's just fun. I'm glad that there is a game based on Adventures of Sonic, just because like we talked about when we did that episode, it's so nostalgic for me, and I'm glad that there is, at least in a weird way, that game kind of lives on, or that series kind of lives on through the repeated releases of this game, and still, people will still have an attachment to those characters in some small way because of this.
It is cool to have Adventures Robotnik in an actual game. Although we did see him on various marketing material and covers in the West.
That's true.
For some reason, they decided to transition over to having that design for Robotnik for various things, like on Triple Trouble and the Game Gear version of Spinball. But having him in the game, I don't know, I just like it. Even if it's kind of confusing for when you see the other design. This is just an alternate universe, isn't it? It's fine. Yep. Even an alternate universe to Puyo Puyo, apparently. So.
I do want to ask you fellas, since one of the things that I saw most commonly was that this game actually did get critically favorable and positive reviews, often citing the fun gameplay, but also the hard difficulty. And on that note, I wanted to ask each of you, how far, just in your entire time of ever playing this game, how far have you ever gotten? Because I can tell you right now, the furthest I have ever gotten playing this game was the third stage, and that was probably like 1 or 2 times. My worst that I've ever done was just a couple days ago when I was playing the game, and I guess I hadn't played it in a long time, and I literally lost to arms, and I'm like, what am I doing with my life?
Goodness. I'm so sorry. That's humiliating.
You lost to Glass Joe?
I picked it up again to do research for this show, just playing the Nintendo Switch online version, and also right out of the gate lost 2 arms. But
it's not just me.
I did make it to, I think it's the 4th stage. It's Coconuts. I made it to Coconuts and was unable to make it any farther than that. Now, I might have made it there, but also I think I mentioned earlier, the way I play is one little combo at a time. So every time it's like, oh yeah, you spent 600 seconds on this stage, you get no bonus. But yes, I can say I made it to Coconuts.
Well, he is Dr. Robotnik's favorite robot. So it's pretty respectable.
He defeated me in a flash.
When I used to play this as a kid, I believe I never actually played it on Genesis. I think the first time I ever played it was when it got re-released as part of Mega Collection. I would usually tap out somewhere around Squeal or Dynamite, so about the halfway point, which is,
nice,
not bad. I did eventually get to Robotnik after a long time. And I did it again while we were prepping for this episode. I beat him on easy. So, I feel pretty good about the fact that I could get to him on any difficulty, but I think it's dumb that every time you beat it, end of the credits, now try normal difficulty, now try hard difficulty, now try hardest difficulty. And the ultimate reward, I keep hoping there's going to be a little extra scene or something. It's just, thank you for playing.
Oh, and I was also definitely playing on easy as well.
Yeah. I will say, It's going to sound weird, but the Puyo Puyo game I played back in the day, most of all, was not this. It was the downloadable Puyo Pop mini game and Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg you could transfer to your GBA.
That's specific.
Yes, because it was one that I could just take with me. So I would like download it to my GBA before school, play a couple rounds, put my GBA in sleep mode, and then, you know, at lunchtime when nobody was looking, I would start it up, like pull it out of sleep mode and play a couple rounds while nobody was looking.
Nice.
I was rebellious.
You're a bad boy.
I remember doing that. I think it was the demo. You could download a demo for WarioWare Inc., the original Game Boy collection.
Yeah.
If you connected your GBA to Wario World, which was a game I had on the GameCube.
Yeah.
And I think I remember playing those mini games over and over. Goodness, Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg. That's got to be somewhere down the pipeline for us.
Yeah, we'll need to discuss that in some capacity.
Well, just like Sonic and Puyo, it would have Yuji Iwakawa art for its main stuff. So
Sonic was in it.
No, there you go. Yeah, so judging by this episode, there's enough reason for us to talk about it. Then.
So, Chris, how far did you get in the game?
I beat Robotnik, you know.
Oh, well, okay.
I've done it a few times now. I did play this a lot as a kid, you know. It's hard. Those beans are coming down fast when you're facing Robotnik, but it's worth it. It's just very satisfying. And then I went and played Puyo Puyo 1 again, and I triumphed in the final climactic battle with Satan. Sorry, it's very funny.
Every time.
Yeah, I just like Puyo. I'm not like the world's best Puyo player, but I can play it enough to get by. And it just gets in your head. You know, it's one of those games which just sort of like never left my brain. The patterns just sort of like stuck in there, just like with Blue Spheres and Sonic, because I just got around to replaying that recently for some reason or another, and that stuff just sticks with you.
Oh yeah.
Whew. Anyway, but that's just my brain, innit?
I imagine that, especially for a game like Puyo and Mean Bean Machine, like you learn to read ahead, but it's also there's got to be some muscle memory to it too.
Yeah, a little bit. I think so. I think after a while, you start of you read the beans before they even arrive. You know, it's the advanced technique.
Some people read the tea leaves. These people read the beans.
Do you ever start to get like the Tetris effect style thing where you're starting to see Puyos falling in your sleep or whatever?
That's not happened recently, but I feel like it's definitely a thing that's happened because, again, I did have dreams about blue spheres as a child. I was in that time. I was the blue spheres guy. So, but you know, I am British, so beans come naturally to me.
Cha-cha.
Throw some toast in there.
Absolutely. But that I think we've covered Mean Bean specifically. Sufficiently, I should say. Specifically and sufficiently.
Beanonically.
But how else did Puyo infiltrate the Sonic world? Because I feel like this was the last sort of connection with Sonic for the longest time, so it was the last reason for people like me to care about Puyo. But but it would get revived later on, right?
Yep, in one very specific way more than any other. And that would be in a little game maybe you've heard of called Sonic Mania.
I've heard of that one. I like that one.
Yeah, so catching everybody off guard, literally the fourth boss in the game, second one of Chemical Plant, is a battle with the Mean Bean Machine, where you're fighting Dr. Robotnik as he drops Puyos, and you have to beat him in a Puyo Puyo battle. And when I discovered that's what was happening, my brain was like...
me and Jackie were like, I was playing it in front of Jackie, and I was so glad this didn't get spoiled for me like, you know, the Green Hill boss did for everyone. Because it was just this moment of, oh my goodness, those nerds! Those nerds!
Yeah, no, they definitely went out of their way to hide it. Like, I remember I actually got to talk to Simon Tomley a little bit when he and I were at a Sonic convention together, like that year of E3, and he was showing off a little bit of Chemical Plant, and it very clearly did not show the boss battle because they did not want it to be spoiled for anybody.
No, I remember. That is one of those things I've heard people talk about it a lot. If you could go back and erase a memory and experience it all over again, is that, yes, getting to the end of Sonic Mania's chemical plant and it drops you into, man, I have no words.
Well, I like that, like, even when it happens, like, even Sonic is surprised by it because he's got that, like, face the whole time. He's just like, wait, this is happening. Okay, well, Puyo.
Yeah, well, he wasn't in Mean Bean, so maybe he's never played it before.
Good point. And you know what? He is looking at Eggman, like, most of the time during that battle, so maybe he's copying him, just like, oh, I get it now.
And to be fair, it's a really, like, out of necessity, because of the sudden genre change, it's a really easy Puyo battle. But it's fun.
It's still fun.
It's there.
It's such a wonderful, like, breakup to everything else in the game. Like, because that game's already just, we'll gush about that game when that day comes, but that game is so good already, and it's fun to have, like, a fitting and unique breakup of the core gameplay into something else that's also super fun.
Just something for the nerdy fans,
Yes.
For the us.
For the us.
I can't recall off the top of my head if it was base Mania or with the Plus update that after you complete that boss fight, it unlocks a more extensive Puyo option in the extra game modes.
I think that was in the original, yeah.
Yeah, it was in the original. You had to collect a bunch of the Blue Spheres medals to unlock it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Sonic Mania, speaking of Blue Spheres, I think that was because I think it was the first update to Blue Spheres that's like 60 frames per second and, easier to play, that turned me into like a Blue Spheres pervert, to where I've completed all of those and gotten all those damn super emeralds, etc., etc. I don't want to be good at Blue Spheres, but I am.
But Beans, though. I'm glad that it's there. I got to destroy Jackie many times on that, because it's just straight up Puyo Puyo 1 rules, and you get to play multiplayer on it's like one of those few multiplayer things in the game. And God, it's just lovely, isn't it? It's just lovely to have this little thing, like just another little cool thing that they put in there. I just love Puyo.
Well, speaking of Puyo, Sonic did make a few more appearances in straight up Puyo games later on down the line.
It's true. For a while, Sonic Team became the main developer of the Puyo Puyo series, so it makes sense that you kind of see a little bit of crossover there. The main thing is you see a lot of, all of the Puyo games would have, different themed Puyos that you could switch to for gameplay. Like, you could have Puyos as they looked like in the original MSX game, or, flat colored or kind of 3D shade or whatever. And one of the variants that shows up in a lot of games is Sonic head themed Puyos. So you'll have a Sonic head, a Tails head, a Knuckles head, Amy head, a Shadow head, whatever have you. It's just a neat little touch, but it's just a minor, thing. It's not a huge kind of Sonic presence. What we get for that, though, is I literally did not discover this until earlier this morning when I was checking, okay, is there any other Sonic stuff that crossed over with Puyo? And yeah, apparently there was a free-to-play version of Puyo Puyo Fever called Puyo Puyo Fever Carnival Edition that had you doing battles against other Sega characters, and one of them was straight up Sonic in his Sonic Rider style, just not even new art, just reused CG artwork. And he was only the opponent for 1 month before it switched to somebody else, maybe Ai or Akira or somebody. But yeah, that was the first time that you ever got to see Sonic in a Puyo Puyo game in a quote unquote character capacity.
But that's really cool, though. I didn't actually know about that either. So I think that preceded Sonic Mania, right? So
yeah, that would have been 2006, 2000. Well, it would have been around the time of the original Sonic Riders, so 2006, 2007.
Oh, so yeah, modern Sonic was getting in on Puyo before actual classic Sonic. Interesting.
The other one that was kind of the big one for a long time is that Puyo Puyo had another kind of FTP mobile game called Puyo Puyo Quest that had a lot of different. It was basically one of those traditional match 3 kind of gacha games where it's pull cards to get special bonuses and everything. And, they had all the Puyo Puyo characters, but they also had a bunch of collaboration events. Like there was an Osumatsu one, a Sailor Moon one, an Evangelion one, just a lot of really weird crossover events. And a couple of times they did stuff with Sonic. So you can unlock these little player cards for like Tails, Knuckles, Movie Sonic, Eggman, random egg pawns and Motobugs for some reason. One of them was Sonic collab costumes for some of the main Puyo Puyo characters, where I'm gonna put the link. I put the link in the thing so you can see. You've got like Ringo dressed up as Shadow, Amity dressed up as Sonic. Just these really cute little.
I'm looking at them now. They're adorable.
They're very cute.
I think my favorite might be this Roko as Tails, which is basically a big kigurumi, it looks like.
like overalls too.
Yes. I'm like, oh man, I would wear that myself. Oh man. Yeah, these are very adorable.
Like that falls with the, Miku Sonic hoodie as cute costumes that I want to see more characters wearing.
Yes.
Yeah, no, the big one, the big one for sure has got to be Sonic himself showing up as a playable character in Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 last year.
Sega!
Oh yeah, was that recent? Yeah.
I remember this is one I picked up. Short story, funny story, silly story. I was at my local Walmart, just who knows, making a grocery run, and walked past the video games and noticed that they had this game, which I knew was not very old, already marked down for clearance for I think $10. And I remember I tweeted out just randomly like, hey, anybody looking for this game? I know it's not very old. I'm going to pick up a copy for myself. And I got two of our mutual friends, actually. I'm not going to blow them up on the show. But immediately replied back like saying, yes, I want a copy very badly and I will pay shipping and everything. So yeah, I ended up walking at a Walmart with 3 Nintendo Switch copies of Puyo Tetris 2 with I think it was also like the day one edition that came with, a code for some extra little goodies. So that was how I learned that, yeah, Sonic was in a Tetris Puyo crossover game, and I have played that one, and it's very fun. Also, just from the nature of it, that is one of the ones that still has a big story mode. And so, yeah, it's like fully voiced, and so is Sonic, and it's like really cute.
Yeah, it is interesting, the timing of that one, because like that was the last game featuring Sonic that came out before Roger announced his supposed departure from the franchise. So
his temporary retirement.
Yeah,
he took a day off.
I'm back.
Yeah, it's just cool. Like, for all the crossover that Sonic and Puyo have had, it's cool to see him get to have this kind of spotlight moment in a mainline Puyo game, and really, like, he really feels like every bit as part of it as anybody else in the cast, aside from, not showing up in story mode or whatever. But that's just like, he was a post-launch edition, so that's fine.
It would have been cool, though. Imagine Sonic getting in the story.
It would have been super cool, but, I'm glad that he's in there at all. And it is funny that he does drop at least one Mean Bean reference in his dialogue.
Wait, he does? What do you say?
Yeah, if you play the Big Bang Attack mode and do a bunch of damage to somebody else, he'll say something like,
"Talk about mean beans!"
Oh my goodness. Fair enough. Good job, Roger. We can't have Long John Baldry in there, but at least we got some representation.
Yeah, I also just really like how he looks, too. Like, Sonic, like most of the other Sonic stuff in the previous Puyo games, it's just they drew over some CG renders, but they adapted him to the Puyo art style for this game, and he looks super duper good.
And it is Yuji Uehara, like I said again, but he's adapted it to fit Puyo, so that's really good.
Yeah.
I watched some gameplay of that in prep for the show, and he looks really good in the Puyo style, and just to echo, it's really cool to hear Roger's voice coming out of Sonic, and like just full emphasis, full enthusiasm, just going for it.
It is funny though that the fact that he was in there accidentally got leaked like a month before it happened because people were data mining the game and found all of his and Kanemaru's voice clips. And it's like, oh, I guess we're getting DLC.
Oh, it's great how that always happens and we don't have surprises or fun anymore.
And thankfully, I did not actually know about that, so it still came as a surprise to me. But yeah, that happens a lot.
At least they didn't find out about the Puyo boss battle. That's what's important
Yeah.
to me. But that's Sonic in Puyo Puyo. But have we ever had a Puyo Puyo in Sonic?
Why, yes,
Actually,
we have.
yes, we have.
Oh, really? Wow.
It's almost as if you were setting me up for this reveal.
It's like I was reading the show notes.
Exactly. So we've gotten a few times, we've gotten Puyo Puyo and Sonic stuff. They're not exactly Sonic titles, but we got some Puyo Puyo representation in the various Sega Superstars All-Stars games. The original Superstars, the iToy one, had a mini game where you had to basically tilt your body to dump Puyos into properly colored bins, which was weird, but again, it was an early iToy game, so, you know, all of them were kind of jank like that. The more interesting one is in Superstars Tennis, where you can literally play Puyo Puyo by hitting your ball against different, like, sets of Puyos to try and create combos. Not really combos, but more just try to take out as many as you can with one hit. It's a really interesting concept. I replayed that game for the first time in a long time, a few months ago, and it's still a surprisingly fun time. It's still a little bit jank, but I really like the concept, and I think it's cool that they had a lot of those sorts of mini games in there. I think it really adds a lot of character to that. The one other Superstars game that I didn't know about until relatively recently is that in Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, but only the Japanese version, the Blowfish item is replaced with a gray garbage Puyo.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
I am also learning about this just today, and that, yeah, the Japanese version came out quite some time after the rest of the world. And yeah, they changed the generic Blowfish, you know, green shell equivalent to a garbage Puyo. And I really love that. And I'm so disappointed that I look up that is not a cross mod for the PC version that someone has done.
That's really good.
And I'm so mad that I can't mod that in, and I can't mod in the Japanese announcer, which is literally Takenobu Mitsuyoshi of Daytona USA fame doing all the announcing.
Sonic and All-Star Racing Transformed!
Come on.
Come on.
Although I bet he probably did not do like any of the post-launch PC characters, unfortunately, because I think only the Wii U version got properly localized into Japanese.
Yeah. No announcements for the Team Fortress 2 characters.
Yeah.
Weird. This isn't vaguely related, but I'm just reminded of the fact that the original All-Stars Racing, the announcer was the guy who played Captain Hollister in Red Dwarf, because they got like a...
Is that who it was?
It's not like a massively known guy, but when I heard it, I was like, is that the dude? Is that the captain? And yeah, it is. So we get to hear him saying, oh, and Ryo Hazuki in the lead now!
I like it!
Sonic opening a can full of dumbass!
It's really nerdy. It's something for us UK fans specifically, but there you go.
There's a minor thing where the pre-order DLC for Sonic Forces, one of the customization items for your created character is you can wear Amity's hat. And that's it.
That's all we're getting. But
yeah. I would have liked to have gotten like a full outfit ensemble, because that was like the only one that did not have both a hat and an outfit to go with it. Like everybody else got both. So that felt a little out of place, but
you will wear your Amity hat with your Sonic shirt and like it.
I know, and your horrible human hands for the Joker costume.
But yeah, no, the biggest case of after that of Puyo Puyo making its way back into Sonic was in the Sonic Runners mobile game, now long since lost to time unless you look into big fan projects. Yeah, no, they did an entire collaboration with Puyo Puyo Quest where there was a little mini story arc where the characters of Puyo Puyo showed up. And it gave us the greatest line of dialogue in a Sonic the Hedgehog game of all time.
I'm very grateful for your help, Satan. Thanks to you, I can finally seize control of this planet.
You got the whole thing, man. That's this was prior to the localization. Well, actually, it wasn't prior to the localization of Dark Prince, but it was prior to it being like enforced in modern Sega products. So yeah, the villain is just straight up Satan in there.
Let's be real though. Considering how many other Chaos God entities Eggman has interacted with over the years, this was inevitable.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, you could say that there is precedence for thinking back to the pulling it all back around to Sonic Racing. Wreck-It Ralph, where Dr. Eggman is indeed the villain support group, which also features a version of Satan.
Oh, yeah.
It's pronounced
Satine.
So Eggman knows his way around a Dark Lord or something.
Yeah. We ended up getting, it was like a whole little mini story thing. We ended up getting a bunch of Puyo Puyo characters as like assists and everything. And we got a very nice Amity costume for Amy that looks actually really good.
Yeah.
I remember seeing these pop up on probably social media at a time, and I kind of regret not playing this game when it was at its peak, just because it looks very cute. And, it, like you said, that's one of those things, it's gone. Like, that is the horrible thing about mobile games, is even if you find one that is like a complete experience that is not too bogged down by free to play, when they turn off those servers, it is gone forever.
Yeah, thankfully, there are fans who have been set up like kind of a rebuilt version to like let you play through all that stuff again, but getting it to actually run takes some doing, so it's not, unfortunately, just not accessible for a majority of people. Like, if you're willing to do the legwork to figure out how to, jailbreak your phone or whatever to actually get that running again, more power to you, but I don't know, it's just unfortunate that a lot of this stuff is now largely inaccessible for the majority of the audience.
Well, that's modern gaming. Am I right, guys? I'm sad now, actually. It does suck that, the convenience of digital media comes with the price of potentially losing it forever when the people behind it decide, you know what, not that anymore. But that's a whole other story for another day.
The sorrowful transience of mobile games.
Yep.
But let's not end this on a downer. I probably should have thought more into what I was going to say.
Yeah, I was hoping you would be able to bring us back there, Jake.
Yeah, I was like, we're out of stuff to talk about.
Jake, please save us. Lend us a hand. Okay. There, we did end on a bit of a negative note, but I think we can wrap this up, because that generally covers the interactions between Puyo Puyo and Sonic the Hedgehog. And if you're a fan of Puyo Puyo and Sonic, then there's been plenty of things there for you to enjoy. But if you're not a fan of Puyo Puyo, again, understandable, because it's only just sort of come back into vogue recently, and partly because of Puyo Puyo Tetris, where they took a much more popular puzzle franchise here in the West and sort of slammed them together in a beautiful mess, which I very much enjoy. That's going to be like the most accessible way to play Puyo I can think, other than some of maybe the other mobile games. I think there was like Puyo Puyo Champions or something out there. But you know what? I just think it's a lovely little franchise. It is weird how it it completely overshadowed the franchise that it was spawned from, like the spin-off that took out and became its own thing. But I think it's very charming, and I just wish there were more legal translated versions of it out there for people to enjoy. But hey, you know what? If you really want, there's the Sega Ages versions that Jeremy mentioned, and there's also Puyo Puyo 2 is also available on the Nintendo Switch, Super Nintendo catalog, I believe. It's not translated, but it's there.
I believe that's correct. If you own the Mega Drive Genesis Mini, you can also switch the language, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine will become Puyo Puyo.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I was gonna say for myself, like I had some very surface knowledge of Puyo before like encountering it again in Sonic Mania and realizing, oh, that's what, Mean Bean Machine is. And this has definitely inspired me to like I want to kind of get into like you said, that the entire universe world story aspect of these games. And so this has been really fun because this is again something that I was very unfamiliar with, and it has inspired me to learn about something that is tangentially related to Sonic that sounds incredibly fun, that I am looking forward to getting into.
I'm in the same boat. I want to start playing some Puyo games, and just because like I don't play enough puzzle games, and I need to get back into that. And like I'm really glad that we did this because it got me back into Mean Bean Machine. And like, as I've said already, it's hard, but it's fun. And I want to, even if I keep losing, I still want to play it because there's something so accessible about puzzle games, especially Tetris style, Puyo style games where it's colorful, it's simple to grasp, and you just go for it.
Congratulations, Chris, you hooked him.
Finally.
You did. You genuinely did.
But it's like, for me, I only found out about it, like, Puyo Puyo Tetris was my first experience with the characters as a whole, because that just drops you in the world of, like, here's Arl, here's Carbuncle, here's literally Satan, but we don't call him that. Here's all these other characters, and there's a world, and it's really strange and weird, and they're all magicians, and I was like, interesting, and that got me into it. And I would discover that Mean Bean Machine was just I hate to say it, but it's the worst version, and I'm not saying that because it's a bad localization, but it's literally Puyo 1. It gets so much better than that. It's a wonderful, colourful, exciting, joyful little series. I really highly recommend that people try their best to go out there and try and find them. They really should release more of them. If they ever brought out a Puyo compilation, I'm putting my money down on that bad boy, I tell you, because just you games companies, give us the games, and we'll buy them. The money. Do you see that? Look on the table. Do you see that money? It's right there. You can take it any moment now. I know this is a Sonic podcast, ladies and gentlemen, but just allow me to say that you should try Puyo Puyo. If you like colourful, fun characters, and you probably do if you like Sonic, then you're going to have a good time with it, and it's fun, and there's anime characters, and one of them eventually fights God, but we don't hear about that in the game, so it's fine. And that's the end.
Yeah, Puyo's a good time. Definitely worth your time to check out. I feel like Sega sneaks it into other games as a playable thing pretty frequently, so you probably don't have to look far to find a version of it.
In fact, if you have a Nintendo Switch and if you pay for the expansion pack online service, I was just reading before that Mean Bean Machine is part of the Genesis / Mega Drive like online library that comes with there. So if you have that, it's already included, and you know.
Actually, if you don't have the expansion pack and only have the standard version, I believe the Super NES version of either the original or 2 is on that as well.
Yeah, it's 2 is on there.
Yeah.
So get yourself some Puyo. It's not you won't be able to understand exactly what's going on unless you read translations, but it's a start.
Get some Puyo, get some beans, and have a good time.
Play Yakuza 6 in Judgment. Spend 500 yen at the arcade.
My relationships are dissolving. I keep spending my money on beans.
Oh my god, you're right, it's in Judgment. I just remembered. That's another way to play it. Go on.
Only the PS4 version of Judgment. They changed it to Virtua Fighter 2 in the remaster.
Oh, disappointing.
Yeah. But it's still in Yakuza 6.
There you go. No excuse. Well, probably many excuses. Those games are expensive, but
yes.
Any chance to play some Puyo.
It's the Steam sale. You can get it just fine. But yeah, that just about does it for this episode.
Yeah, we made it through. That's an all clear, I guess. That's a Puyo reference. What do we do now? Oh, right. Yeah, so we made it through Puyo. let's all plug our socials and such like, I guess. I'm Falero. You can find me at Falero. That's Faulero on all the social medias, probably. Not all of them. But look out anyway. You might find me.
That was your smoothest read of your jingle ever. I love it.
I know. I've actually memorized it. I re-listened to a few of our episodes at this point.
And I'm Jeremy, also known as Game Buddy around the web, and you can follow me on Twitter at GreatJobJeremy. That's GR and the number 8.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at RockTheJake.
And you can find me on Twitter at Cyberlink420.
Special thanks, as always, to Amy Waters for the use of our theme song, which she made from the album Gotta Go Slow. You can check out more of her work on YouTube and Bandcamp, and you should. It's all very lovely. I can't imagine our show without her theme song. That lo-fi chill Green Hill.
It's very good.
Really nice.
So good.
It's really good.
It's very good. And of course, please remember to, like, share, rate us on iTunes, leave a comment, everything. Help us spread the word around, because we really want to, help the show gain some traction, get into more ears.
I would like to engage with you all. I think we need to start saying really negative and horrible things so people will interact with us more, because negativity breeds interactions online.
Yeah.
But so you guys better start interacting with us, or we start hammering out really terrible hot takes. That's your warning.
I don't know. Like, the Sonic fandom has always been known for constant positive takes. There's never been any, displeasure or drama ever. So we're probably never going to have to deal with that.
I was going to say, I've got enough mental illnesses already. I'll leave that to you guys.
But what are we doing next time?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, as of time of recording, Sonic Origins has just released, but we're not going to talk about it until we do a compilations episode. So let's do a compilations episode.
Let's
do it. Yep, kind of blew the lid off that one at the top. But yeah, I'm kind of, this is one of the things that we've had as an idea since Origins got announced. And now that it's out, I was actually thinking that, there have been quite a few Sonic compilations, and I'm interested to dive back into the ones I'm familiar with, like Mega Collection, and also ones that I've never touched, like the aforementioned weird Nintendo DS conversion of some of the original Genesis games.
Yeah. I've been doing some kind of light research on some of them, and I'm going to have some stuff to talk about stuff that was planned and cut from certain compilations. Because
I'm looking forward to hearing
that. If I'm not going to lie, if some of that stuff had made it in, there would be a very different conversation around certain aspects of the Sonic franchise. And I will say no more than that.
That's a good tease right there.
You gotta join us next time, folks. You'll find out what the hell Luke is talking about.
The evil mastermind.
But this has been The Hill Is Always Greener. Thank you for joining us once again, and thank you for indulging me while I talk about Puyo Puyo on a Sonic podcast.
Anytime.
Hey, thanks, lads. But yes, I have been Falero.
I'm Game Buddy.
I'm Rock the Jake.
And I'm Cyberlink, and this chili dog appears to contain some really mean beans. Oh, fun fact, I used to have a machine that made those. It was a rather niche market.
I remember that.
Good stuff.
Thank you for listening.
Good night, everybody.
To acquisite these beans, please. Why so many beans? That is none of your concern.